Hello there. They call me Mr. E. Now, if you live in a place where buying a home is one of the biggest life choices you can make, and the pressures of home ownership is the stuff of nightmares, then you're probably interested in the subject of private property. Private property is this sacred element of modern life, up there with freedom of speech and the notion that all are born equal. But is it really as important as these fundamental human rights? My right to free speech doesn't stop you from speaking freely, but my right to property unquestionably denies you access to it. If private property rights exist to benefit some at the exclusion of others, then what stops this system from being abused? I think that's worth investigating.
My name is Mystery. For reasons unknown, I have been thrown back into the past almost 100 years, and this is my story.
The idea of private property is the result of the age of revolutions. When people were overthrowing the absolute rule of kings and queens, they started to think of being free. And what parts of society come together to give you freedom? Private property was one of those components. The people thought of it as their opportunity to have their own little kingdom. Protected by society, you could own something for yourself to maintain your own existence in the pursuit of your own happiness. The early revolutionaries, who looked to remove kings and the nobility, objected to their power because it comes from the idea of hereditary rule, being the idea that someone's power came from the class and the family they were born into. This was thought to be the ultimate insult to a rational society and a simply ridiculous notion. If humanity was to be truly progressive, then how could you have a culture where people got status and power by complete chance, being simply born to the right parents, rather than earning it on their own merits? They argued that wisdom doesn't pass from parent to child, and therefore how could there be any justification for having someone to hold status and power simply based on their lineage? This is common sense stuff now, but a couple of 100 years ago, this was absolutely revolutionary thinking. And so, as part of dismantling the hereditary system, the revolutionaries looked to create societies based on equals, not based on family status. But how do you protect your interests, if not by birthright? You privatise. No longer was property to be communal or held by the crown. It could now be owned privately. This was to be the modern way, and it would change humanity forever. Now, I touched on this before as a pure idea about, protecting an individual's private interests against some tyrannical king that wanted to take everything for themselves by birthright. And so private property laws were enshrined into revolutionary society as part of civil rights. Now let's fast forward a bit though, from these humble beginnings. Private property didn't stop at the individual. It's not a system that simply allows everyone a plot of land to raise a family and grow some vegetables. It is the basis of the world economy. Private interests are business interests. It was the private property system that allowed capitalists the opportunity to hoard wealth, create industry, and monopolize the means of producing all goods and services since the beginnings of the Industrial Revolution. It is private property that allows landlords to ruthlessly hold tenants like slaves to their interests. One of the main cornerstones of leftist thinking or working class thinking up until the end of World War II was that private property was an abomination of civil society and should be abolished. Like, I'm not talking people owning their own home here. I'm talking about corporations, greedy landlords, banks, hoarding property and using it to gain and concentrate power, not just locally or nationally, but across the globe. Private property ideals are the cornerstone of consumerist society, which sees developed, rich countries with large sections of their populations living below the poverty line, while billionaires splash grossly accumulated wealth on space races in a pissing contest with other obscenely rich people. The paradoxical or ironic thing about private property, though, as much as people will argue it's essential in a free society, is that it produces the exact same conditions as the hereditary system of kings and nobility. It concentrates power into the hands of a limited ruling class. You think Bezos, Musk, or Zuckerberg are going to let go of their wealth when they retire or die? No, it'll stay in their family. It's their legacy. There is no difference in the private property system and a hereditary system in terms of class power and social inequality, just the illusion of opportunity. An illusion that you might make it into the ruling class. But even peasants knew they weren't going to be a king one day, no matter how hard they worked. And so I would argue that private property is worse because of its allure. I'm not against people buying a home. But do you really need 7? I'm not against people having a successful business. But do you really need to accumulate $100 million in assets and monopolize your market? Private property ostensibly facilitates freedom. What it really does is allow unchecked greed and hoarding, placing ridiculous pressure on humanity and the planet, ultimately destroying free society. If we are going to continue with a private property system sustainably, we need to rethink private property. It should be a right for individuals, and outside of that, it should be no more than a privilege at best. And if you abuse it, then you should lose it. Because there are plenty of people out there that would like the opportunity with some property. This is not a supply thing. It's a hoarding problem. Now, if you thought this was interesting, please give it a like and a share. And please subscribe for more. There is much to learn about the revolution. Remember, I am, you are, we are a mystery.